Hello, welcome back. This is week 3 of the Hook'em Horns YouTube show. My name is Andrew Miller. I'm the editor over at hookemheadlines.com. With me is Tariq Lacour and Shane Black, also from hookemheadlines.com. We're back to discuss, the crazy Alabama game from last weekend, give some, thoughts as we've had a few days to let that settle in. Talk about some of the injuries that have happened, that happened in the game last weekend, how that's progressed, and then get into outlook and predictions for the game this weekend. I'll be honest, I didn't get the round table up. I only got Carson in for the predictions before Saturday. I kind of got a late message posted there. I think all of us had a Texas losing by at least 2 scores. Am I wrong on that?
No, I had them only losing by 1 touchdown.
You did? Okay. Okay. So
I think
that is the case.
I was
Shane,
at 2,
what did you have?
Sure. I was definitely at 2. I think it's 17-point difference is how I saw it.
I think I had 21 or 24, so I definitely was not the closest. Tark, if that is the case, which I'll take your word for it, that means that 2 straight, because Carson had him losing by like 20 also. So, Tark, you take the cake there 2 weeks in a row then. Having a lot of faith in Texas has paid off so far this season, so I'm all good with that.
I'm president of the Quinn Ewers fan club for a reason, and I think I was.
Yeah, insane while he was in still on Saturday. His injury status is looking more positive at this point, but we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. So I'll kind of start with some thoughts that I had on the Alabama game. I'll just get through it pretty quick because we've had a lot of time to let that sink in, and obviously a ton of people talking about it. I mean, beyond the obvious of the resiliency of Hudson Card, Quinn Ewers looking really good there for a little bit, how good the defensive line played. A few of the thoughts I had that haven't been talked about a whole lot this week. I still thought that the outside blocking or some of the wide receiver and tight end blocking was pretty good on Saturday. I think just as a theme for this season, the blocking from the skill guys has just been worlds better. Jordan Whittington's been a better blocker. Casey Kane has been at least high motor blocker. Savion Red has been a good blocker when he's been in the game. You got some young guys that for the most part are just looking like either very impressive right away or worlds difference from what I thought they would be this season. Ryan Watts, I've looked a lot into him this week, talked a decent bit about him. Obviously, he'll be remembered for the most part from Saturday for missing the sack of Bryce Young, unfortunately, because he had a really good game. Otherwise, I kind of found a deep dive stat where he's 5th in the Big 12 right now in terms of receptions allowed per pass coverage snaps. And he gave up, one was a touchdown, but he gave up 2 receptions for 9 yards on 4 targets so far this season. Those sort of stats are up there with the very best of them in terms of some pretty good underrated cornerbacks in the Big 12. So man, he's been good, and I'll get into more of this later, but he's going to have to be really good, really good this weekend. So, but Tarek, I'll pass it over to you for thoughts on the Alabama game.
Well, I was there. Very loud, very passionate crowd, and I don't think anyone would have thought going into the 4th quarter that Texas would be within a chance to win the game with less than 2 minutes. And yes, it was nice stuff. But overall, I thought Texas played pretty well. And also, Mildly different than the person I've seen. He looked like he'd been there before. He didn't look nervous. He's hitting a deep ball, hitting stuff off schedule throws. So I thought that was very good. Overall, it's not a whole lot to nitpick. I mean, Vegas and Texas losing by 21, and
Yeah.
Alabama didn't score 20. So
Yeah. Right.
having said that, there's no such thing as a moral victory. So at the end of the day, while lots of good things came out of this, it's kind of sadly there's still a part of you that thinks, why is it that Texas just can't finish a game when it's that close? Because that seems to have happened. Now you can say, well, it's Alabama, but you keep having it year after year, and you start to. So, that's good.
Yeah, I just think when it's like, man, yeah, I mean, obviously, like last weekend, it's just easy to say, well, it's Bryce Young. 'Cause, I mean, it is Bryce Young, but like, just you have so many breaks go against you. I feel like eventually, like against the number one team, it's just when you have that much working against you, the missed safety, missing that easy field goal, all the quarterback injuries. Yeah, so, but yeah, it'd be nice just like one time for Sark to get that coin flip to go his way. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the game, Shane?
Yeah, so I think I would have thought it would have had to be the other way around, with us getting all the breaks in order to have any chance of competing in this game. So the fact that, you can, and I don't think we should harp on any of the moments, that have been circulating on Twitter, but the fact you can go back to 4 or 5 different instances in the game and be like, that was a major turning point and the Texas Longhorns could have won if so-and-so had happened, is honestly like a good sign. It wasn't, obviously the missed field goal hurt, but it wasn't really us beating ourselves. So the one thing that stood out to me, though, kind of on a macro level, is how we could hang with Alabama on the outside. I don't think that there was a problem on the offensive and defensive side on the outside. I think that Alabama had their fair share of drops, which plagued them through the first 3 quarters, and Bryce Young had them locked in the fourth quarter. But I think our athletes matched up well on the outside. There's still some work to be done in the trenches. As you can see, we couldn't really move the ball on the ground, but just how we matched up wide receivers to defensive backs, going both ways, I like what I saw. And I think at least through the scripted part of the first quarter, you could see what a play caller like Sark does for an offense, because he seemed to build a lot of confidence in Quinn. There's a good amount of open throws with players, high caliber players getting the ball in their hands in space, being able to move. So, I think my major takeaway was that we can't hang on the outside. Still have to build those trenches out, which Sark has clearly been doing through the recruiting scene. So, I think a lot of positives to take away from this past weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, just so we don't end up talking about this all too long, I kind of looked back at Alabama's season last year, and without like kind of comparing Texas to A&M, because I think there were some things you could have learned, but it was just like those games were so different the way A&M Bama went last year versus Texas Bama this year. I did a lot of film study based off what like Florida did against Alabama last season. Dan Mullen, to his credit, as bad as last season went for Florida. Florida came out with a really good game plan against Alabama last year. Did a lot of motion early on, had a lot of like speed option concepts that obviously you don't run that with Quinn Ewers the way that Florida does with Emory Jones, but like Florida hung with Alabama with Emory Jones at quarterback. I just hope that, like for teams that played Alabama close last season but still lost, that like it's more like how Arkansas was last season, where it was like there was legitimate improvement and they hung with Alabama for a reason. Whereas like it's not just one good game plan like Florida had last season and the rest becomes a disaster. So obviously looking for the more optimistic situation there, but Let's move on now to talk a little bit more about some of the injuries that have happened this week, and maybe guys that can step up. Just seeing some second, third stringers, some younger guys getting reps that just wouldn't be otherwise. We'll start at quarterback, Quinn Ewers. I think the prognosis is going to end up being closer to 3 or 4 weeks for him to come back. I just think he's going to be back for OU. I think that is the common school of thought now. Hudson Card, he is still day-to-day. It sounds like he's at like somewhere between 60 to 70% on that ankle in individual drills, and he hasn't quite worked back to team drills yet. Charles Wright is still pretty much taking all the first team reps when it comes to team drills in practice through the first 3 days. Running back, I just imagine that we're going to see Roschon Johnson out on the field for like 80% of snaps this weekend. It's just probably going to be one of those situations for him. Probably more plays behind the line of scrimmage, getting the ball into Keelan Robinson's hands. And then, I think we're just going to see more of Jonathan Brooks as well. But this is going to be the Rojo and Keelan Robinson show, definitely. And cornerback, Deshaun Jameson, questionable to potentially doubtful this weekend. At least that's what I see as of now. That could involve. I'm a fan of moving Jahdae Barron over to the field corner position, letting Jalen Gilbo take the starting reps at star. But Jameer Johnson has looked good. I don't think that would be the worst thing, but you need an experienced corner this weekend. Just UTSA's receivers are so good, but we can talk about that a little bit more later. So I think I think Jahdae Barron in a weird way is really going to have to step up. Jalen Gilbo will also have to bounce back after just kind of a slower game against Bama than he had against ULM, as to be expected for a true freshman. And then, I think this is going to have to be the first big game of the season for Keelan Robinson. But I'll pass it over to y'all, kind of who you're thinking has to step up.
So I think Jameer Johnson is a name to note. I think he's taken the fifth most snaps in this defensive backfield, although not being the starter. I think his earnings can pay off this weekend, and I'd like to see him, if not moving to the starting role, move into a role where he's out there a lot. I hadn't thought about moving Jahdae Barron to the field corner. I don't hate that idea at all. It's one of those things where you just want to get your best players on the field all at once, no matter how you do it. So I actually do not hate that idea in the slightest. But with how we held up in the back end against Bama, I know there were some drops, and I know you noted that UTSA does have some guys on the outside themselves. I think our corners should be playing with a lot of confidence, and that's kind of like the number one trait you need from defensive back. So you didn't get beat at all over the top against Alabama, so I think that's going to allow them to be a bit more aggressive, and I'm excited to see how that plays out. But I think Jameer Johnson, who you mentioned before, is a guy who could really step up this weekend.
I agree with using Jahdae Barron as a corner for this game, getting Deshaun Jameson healthy, and getting Hudson Card healthy for Big 12 play, because I think, if nothing else, the Alabama game showed if you can hang with these guys, you should be able to hang with anyone in the Big 12, because most teams in the Big 12 are full of players who could not get an Alabama out. So remember that. So, everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And then also, this could be a game where you could see not only Keelan Robinson and obviously a lot of Jonathan Brooks, but I'd like to see if they could get Jaden Blue in for a few plays to see what he can do, especially receiving out the backfield, because Charles Wright will need a lot of easy reads, and Jaden Blue has really good hands. But if there's ever a game for Keelan Robinson to really show out, this would be the one.
Yeah, UTSA doesn't have a whole lot of speed in the secondary, I have learned. They have experienced players in the secondary. But, like, if Army was kind of getting over the top last weekend, I think there's some opportunities for Texas. Yeah, it's
Didn't correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Army throw for like 250 yards or something?
yeah, I think Army had more passing yards than rushing yards.
I think they were actually in the 300s, which is something you never hear for Army.
Yeah, that's crazy. That shows you that tells you something for sure.
Yeah, you can really get some guys down the seams too with UTSA. Man, I wrote about this. I just put my bold predictions up before we started recording. Two of the key things against UTSA. So, like, again, they have a pretty experienced secondary, and Jeff Traylor is a good head coach that prepares well. But, like, also, I think this has been a pretty hectic few weeks for him to have to prepare for Dana Holgorsen, then Army's triple option, and now Texas, and they don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. Like, you're going to have opportunities here to get guys. Maybe it'd be Xavier Worthy over the top. Maybe you find Jordan Whittington down the middle. Oh, maybe you get Jatavian Sanders open on in the flats or down the seam. I think there's some opportunities there. UTSA is one of 9 teams in the FBS that has allowed at least 4 passing plays on the season of 40 or more yards. There's opportunities here to beat that or to get some big plays against them. And yeah, I kind of like your idea. Target. There's just something about seeing Jaden Blue trots into the end zone in the third quarter to put Texas ahead, and just you weren't expecting them to. Maybe they come out in 21 personnel or something like that. Give an easy dump off for Charles Wright. That is an interesting idea. I like that. Okay, so I just kind of want to talk about the UTSA game in general, giving a few thoughts on it, and we can give our predictions on it as well, kind of at the end of this. So I think beyond the obvious X factors of UTSA, where their defensive line is very good, their top 3 wide receivers are really as good as any top 3 wide receivers get in the group of 5. And then Frank Harris, one of the best quarterbacks in the group of 5. Also just one of the smartest quarterbacks in the country. He fumbles the ball a lot. I talked about that in my bold predictions. He fumbled the ball some 15 times, 14 times, somewhere in that ballpark in the last 2 seasons. He's fumbled the ball I think more than twice as much as he's thrown picks. So I don't know. Havoc in the backfield will be a big thing. Just actually getting hats on the football. But UTSA's secondary, I think, is going to be a little bit prone here. Their linebackers should be overmatched against Texas from a physicality perspective. And I mean, if Texas's offensive line hung tough against Alabama, sure, UTSA's defensive line is good, but it's just not. It's not the same, obviously. And so from that perspective, I think it's being a little bit overblown that UTSA, they're very physical. But there's going to be opportunities in the ground game, I think, to get free. I think my biggest X factor in this game is really going to be Texas's ability to contain Frank Harris. Once you let Frank Harris get some time, get on the move, if you let him roll out, especially getting to the left, he likes to roll out to the left. He likes to look to the left side of the field. He is a lefty, but also he's got 3 targets. Shane off recording, I mentioned to you just now that UTSA's top 3 wide receivers have 40 catches combined for 600 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns in the first 2 games of the season. They combined for some 2,500 yards receiving last season. So we're in the ballpark of 24 touchdowns. They're just insanely productive, and Texas is short at corner right now. So, but if you contain Frank Harris to a decent degree, there's only so much these receivers can do. The pass rush is going to have to be good, and you just can't give Frank Harris that much time to throw. He's like one of the 5 highest. He was one of the 5 highest graded, I believe, quarterbacks in the FBS last season with over 3 seconds to throw. You gotta rattle him. But I'll save my prediction till the end. Shane or Tark, if you want to get your thoughts on the game.
I think a big key for keeping Frank Harris in control is going to be Ovia Gofu not over pursuing, and making sure you keep him in the box. So if you maybe
or Ovia Gofu not being held.
Huh?
Ovia Gofu not being held.
Well, that too, but that's up to the refs.
Yeah.
But my feeling is if you can keep him in the pocket, don't make him and then make him just throw it that way, I think that's probably the best way. Where I think Frank Harris would really have a lot of success against Texas is if he's getting out of the pocket, kind of throwing on the run, especially towards his left. But if you keep him in, try to make him a pocket passer and say, okay, look, we can't completely get a bunch of sacks or all that, but we can keep you in there, and we're going to make a pocket passer and make you beat us that way. That I think we could. That I think is going to be very important too.
Yeah, I would say as kind of more of an overall theme. We saw a ton of letdown last year. And, I mean, players read social media, they see everything, they see everyone talking about how, Texas could have won that game last week, and they should be holding their head high. Like, Clark wants that to be, they're not giving more of a feed, but playing the best, or the so-called best team in the nation to 1 point is nothing to be ashamed of. So, Jeff Traylor is going to have the Roadrunners up for this game. So it goes without saying any university in Texas that comes to Austin is going to be ready to play. No matter what sport, they have to execute on the cold, and most of the guys on that team didn't get an offer from Texas. So that Traylor is going to have his guys ready to play, and I just really want to see Texas start fast. It's going to pay dividends in the long run, especially if Charles Wright does get the go. You don't want to go into halftime tied, maybe going into the fourth quarter up 3 or down 3, and then Charles Wright is going to have to start pressing. I think ideally we get a game script where we go up 10 or 14 points pretty early. We're able to run the ball, take the air out of it, get Charles Wright on the move, some easier throws, build his confidence, and then we can kind of put it on cruise control. But the longer you leave UTSA in this game, the more likely that they're going to be able to sneak out with a victory. And obviously, as the scorned Texas fans that we are, that's just not something I want to see, but it's certainly very plausible. So, especially with all the injuries, I'd love to see us start strong in this first 15 minutes on Saturday.
Yeah, that's a fair point you make there, Shane. That is so important that Texas starts fast on Saturday. You can't have Charles Wright playing from behind against Frank Harris. They can load the box and then take away Bijan or Roshan or whatever you have there. Then you start putting the pressure on Charles Wright before he's able to build up much confidence, and you really put yourself in a box at that point. If you can get ahead early, then that encourages you to maybe take 1 or 2 downfield shots. That allows you to run the ball more freely. That allows you to maybe let Roshan take more wildcat snaps with kind of more options there. I actually wrote in my bold predictions for this week. This was my favorite one, but also definitely the least likely to happen, that Roshan has more passing yards than rushing yards.
Okay. That's a bold prediction that you had?
Yeah, it's my boldest prediction of the season so far, and it's not even close. But, man, I was looking back today, close to a 63 completion percentage in high school. Senior, junior season, he had about 9 or 10 adjusted yards per passing attempt. He can get off the deep ball, or he can even find him through the seams. I know it's not the same. He's not in the same rhythm he was in high school, obviously, at this point. He's been playing running back for 4 years. But if he's got someone open, Texas has trusted Xavier Worthy to play quarterback or give him some reverse passes and whatnot. why not let Roschon do it?
Yeah, so that's just kind of more on like you think we're going to see a little bit more Wildcat, and there's a chance he completes one over the top for, like a 60-yard touchdown or something.
Yeah, because this is just, it's going to probably end up being the lowest scoring game since that Kansas State game. So, it's just it's so emphatic too at the outset of this season. The possession battle, maybe I'm just thinking of the A&M game too much, which is just hilarious that they got that App State had 20 minutes more in possession time than them, but it's like possession time, especially in this game, is going to be critical. And so I think you're going to have Roschon Johnson, like I said, I think he's going to be on the field for like 80 to 85% of snaps. And I think you're going to see a lot of Wildcat. I would imagine. I don't see, even if Card is starting, like you're probably not going to want to keep him on the field a whole lot. Like if you can minimize the snaps he takes, I think that's what you would try to do. I don't know. Like I said, that's my boldest prediction of the season, so I can't give a whole lot of analysis on it that makes sense. But I could see a situation where Texas tries to get some guys over the top. Sark's been coming up with some pretty crazy game plans that are really impressive. Why not get crazier?
Yeah, I think just one other thing I want to mention about this game is, Andrew, you mentioned it at the beginning of this recording that, we're kind of hoping Sark didn't throw all of his eggs in one basket and exhaust, everything he had in that game plan against Alabama. Certainly it worked on script. There was some crazy, crazy formations going on that, a lot of pre-snap motion, and it looked like they've been practicing these plays, for a while now. So I hope that there's still, some tricks in the bag to be able to get Charles Wright some confidence the way he was able to get Quinn confidence last Saturday, because that first drive and a half, obviously Quinn made a heck of a throw, like a couple of great throws, but there was a lot of just, wide open in the flats, get the ball in space to your playmakers. And I think Sark's good at scheming that open, and I think it's going to be important for Charles to grow his confidence. We're speaking like Charles is going to be the starter this weekend. We don't know that for sure yet, but if that's the case, I think that's pretty crucial.
Either way, so Army's, I think I was looking at this, Army's tight ends had some 85 receiving yards.
Wow.
When was the last time you heard multiple Army tight ends combined for 85 receiving yards? I just think that there's going to be some simplicity you can go with, get Jatavian Sanders some targets in the flats. Charles Wright, the two things that he's pretty good at, making off-schedule plays when needed and hitting his guys in the flats, or he's pretty good at making some of those corner route throws. I dug up one set of camp highlights from him too, so just to try to get him in a little bit different setting. I believe it was from 2018 or 2019. So just to get a little bit different setting. But yeah, he's got a pretty nice throw on some of those 10, 15-yard outs or corners. Also his deep ball, it ain't bad. There's going to be I keep saying there's going to be opportunities for it. You can't you can do more with him than just some simple 5-yard outlets, screen plays, whatever that be. I think that would be one of the biggest mistakes, is to let an experienced secondary for UTSA just sit on a bunch of screen and slow developing slant routes. I don't know. This is a weird week, and I could be completely wrong because I was completely wrong about last weekend. So, but I'll go ahead and give my prediction. I actually posted my prediction yesterday, and I'm going to adjust it down a little bit. I had Texas winning 31-21 yesterday. I've been thinking a little bit more about it, and I think we're going to have some issues in the red zone that I wasn't really thinking about yesterday, just because UTSA is pretty good in the red zone. They've had a hell of a lot of experience on red zone defense lately with 2 straight overtime games to start this season. I'm going to say 27-21. Texas. I think the game's going to be a little too close for comfort at first, but we're able to close it out in the second half. Kind of a Roshan Johnson sort of effect from Kansas State last season. So that's my prediction.
I'm going to go Longhorns 30-17. I think what you just brought up about red zone concerns is very valid, considering the fact that we struggled so much in the red zone last week, and we likely won't have, some of our best offensive players this week to ease any of that pressure. And you said UTSA is a pretty experienced secondary that's probably be able to lock down the red zone. But I like 30-17. I'm hoping this is more the hope than it is a prediction. Like I mentioned earlier, that we start fast. I would much prefer to see a game that, we're kind of up 10 points throughout most of it rather than pull away late. But I could see it going a multitude of ways. I really do despise these games where you have a really good UTSA team, one of the better teams in the Group of 5 coming in. Like, it's very feasibly pull off an upset, but the casual consensus that you see, not even from media, but more from like casual fans, is the Texas goes out and loses this game, and we get lost out of the agreement. So I really get nervous with game Texas. I think this team is different than we were in 2021. I think they'll be resilient, and I think they're going to come out and play well under the lights of UCLA.
Yeah. I hope they don't lose. That was so bad heading into Tech if they lost this weekend. Tarek, your prediction on it?
I'm similar to Shane. I'm going to say 35-17. So I think that the way that Sark is going to be is a very creative play caller. You also have Brennan Marion, who ran that go-go offense, and I think with these running backs, they'll be able to find different ways to exploit them and get them the ball. You still have Xavier Worthy, still have Tavian Sanders, Jordan Whittington. Even with Charles Wright, who's not we don't really know what to expect from him. Or if Hudson Card, I'll say this, if Hudson Card plays, even at 70%, I'm not going to be too worried. If Charles Wright comes in, might be worried at the beginning, but I think he'll find the rhythm. Sark will get him in the rhythm. So I think we will win fairly comfortably.
Well, you've been the closest to being right no pun intended. You've been the closest to being right, or the most right, every game this season. So I am hoping that continues.
I agree.
I certainly am too.
Yeah. So
I also think that the game being at home will help as well.
Yeah, on Longhorn Network.
Nice. There we go.
That alone should make us want to go to the SEC in 23, but that's another story.
If neither of y'all have Longhorn Network, I can get y'all the password on that.
I have it, but I wish I didn't need it.
Yeah, right.
I'm the same way on that.
Just to catch those, I can catch Sark's press conference just through a link, but if I'm not going down for the game, it's $20 extra a month, just for 2 football games and 10 basketball games.
Yeah.
A season is basically what you're paying.
And luckily they're never good football games. So, could you imagine if Alabama was on Longhorn Network?
Well, Texas, back in 2018, had that Iowa State game. It was a top 25 game.
All right, yeah, I remember that. I saw that when I was on a cruise with my wife, and I remember watching that. We're at the really nice restaurant, and I had my phone propped up watching the game and eating at the same time.
Man,
first time I had filet mignon, and also that was the last time the Texas beat Iowa State. So.
Well, hey, Iowa State finally beat Iowa this season, so I'm saying reverse fortunes here, and that
But Iowa's so bad.
I couldn't watch the game. I just can't. I
Yeah,
can't do it.
brutal.
I can't watch a game that's going to have more punts than points. It's just
Very
it's
brutal.
not. But
It was like a worse version of the Cowboys-Bucks game.
yeah, I saw a meme today where it was like breaking. I don't know. Maybe this was a big thing. I'm not a huge. I live in Dallas. I'm not a huge Cowboys fan. I'm just not from here. I'm a big Colts fan. But hey, Hook'em. That works out well now. But yeah, I saw a meme where it's like breaking Dallas Cowboys fan arrested, forced to stay in game.
Yep, I posted that meme too.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to a Cowboys game on the 30th. No, was it 30th or 31st? One of the two. It's the Chicago Bears game. My father, who's from Chicago, is a big Bears fan, so that'll be my first trip to Jerry World, and that might be the return of Dak Prescott. So we'll see.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they're such a wreck.
We're so bad.
Oh, you're a Cowboys fan?
I am.
Okay.
I wouldn't be going to the game if I wasn't.
I guess that's fair. Jerry World's cool though. At least it's a fun experience, even if it's like, I mean, Bears, Cowboys. I don't. That might, yeah. But, so Tarek, you mentioned Brennan Marion in the go-go offense. We might see 40 plus run plays this weekend. I had actually done a write-up a few years ago. I was just looking back on this. I had done a write-up a few years ago because Texas was this was like 2019, where Texas was starting to run the ball a little bit more often with Keontae and Roschon at the time. And I thought it was interesting because Brennan Marion was William and Mary's offensive coordinator. I watched William and Mary a little bit closer. That's where my mom went to school. Just an FCS team that I've been a fan of for a while. But I did an article about what Texas can learn from the go-go offense from Brennan Marion back in 2019, and I just think it's ironic now because I think you're going to see a lot of that go-go offense, like you said. I think there's going to be a lot of influence for that this weekend. It's not going to be like an offense that we see for the rest of the season, I don't think. So, but we can get some finishing thoughts here. Some final thoughts before we jump off for the week.
Yeah, I think that this is a game that's really about, can Texas take what they did from the Alabama game, and can they show this wasn't a fluke, this is who we are, we've changed, we're a strong defense, we're an attacking defense. Can they really also show that they can run the ball when people know they're going to run the ball? The things that Sark actually said after the spring game, if you remember, he said one of the things I want to do this season is I want to run the ball when people know I'm going to run the ball and still be effective at it. Here's a good barometer challenge for that. Can they run the ball without Bijan Robinson and still be as effective? And if they can do that, I think that's going to bode well in the Big 12, where right now I'm not particularly worried about any defenses. That's something that surprised me a little bit. I thought I would see a lot with Oklahoma State and Baylor. I'm like, these aren't the same defenses from last year. So
they're not.
That's my parting shot. Parting thoughts are the same as what Sark said after the spring game.
Yeah.
I would say, just to kind of piggyback off that, we saw last week our offensive line held up well in pass pro, not as strong in run blocking, and I think it's important that they prove that they can impose their will on a defensive line who has a lot smaller bodies than what we have up front on the offensive line. So I'm excited to see those guys, and what Andrew, like you were saying, in a game we're probably going to run the ball 40 plus times. I'm excited to see those guys, put a hat on a hat and move the UTSA defensive line back. One other thing I will note is I think we should give, Bernard Auburn and Daniel Trejo their shot their due. Obviously, you had the missed field goal at the end of the half. It was not Auburn's fault. The laces were just not there. We don't want to call anyone out, but it was a
You
long
just had to bring that up.
We've had a couple problems snapping the ball and special teams earlier this season, but that shouldn't take away anything from the fact that Auburn nailed what would have been the game-winning kick against the number one team in the country. What was it, like a 49-yarder?
Yeah.
And then Trejo has been a godsend punting the ball. This past week was his first week as the true starter, and he had that pin inside the 2 where if things would have worked out, we should have got 2 points on the board via safety. But I think special teams, it was kind of a question mark, still is a bit of a question mark because of the long snapping issue. But I think our 2 specialists have locked it down. Will Stone as well. He can't really boot the ball out of the end zone, but he hasn't done anything egregious. So I'll take that as a win.
Yeah. Sorry, Tarek, I'll cut this part out. What were you saying?
My daughter is having a rough night, so I need to get her back down.
Okay. I'll do the sign off for you. Thank you for joining.
Tarek.
Welcome.
All right. So Tarek had to jump off, but want to thank him for his time and what is a very valid take on Texas needing to come up strong this weekend. Shane, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think I just hope we can impose our will, get off to a strong start on Saturday. And I just want to give that shout out to the 2 specialists because it kind of went a little bit unnoticed in what turned out to be an unfortunate result on Saturday, but I think they both did their part very well.
Yeah, no, I mean, Daniel Trejo's already averaging like 45 yards per punt. Like top 5 in the I mean, I know there's 10 teams in the Big 12, but top 5 in the Big 12 already? Man, yeah, that's awesome. So I wanted to mention one thing you said last week, or I don't remember if you said it during the show. I remember you put it in your article for the skill players for Alabama, because this is one thing I did not have as much faith in as you did. That was Texas's corners matching up, or at least in pass coverage, just Texas's D matching up in pass coverage or man coverage with Alabama and holding serve. I really thought it was going to be a breakout week for Kobe Prentice. I really liked what he did in week 1, but man, yeah, Texas held up well. Alabama's wide receivers were pretty bad as well. And so I'll give you props there because that was something I was definitely not.
Yeah,
not
I think part of it, like you said, to the latter part of your statement, Alabama's wide receivers. I'd be interested to know the number, but there was certainly a good amount of passes that went off their hands and hit the turf. And there's always that meme that goes around about DBs celebrating when a wide open receiver drops a pass. But I mean, DBs are a different breed, and I think there is something to the fact that when they see that ball hit the turf, however it happens, they start to build confidence. So I think a few drops from Alabama helped our guys build confidence, and I'd like to see him carry that this week against a receiving core that you've noted is more than strong, especially for a group of 5 teams.
Yeah, that is true. So some of my parting thoughts, I had mentioned before. I think I'd mentioned before we got on the recording that I wanted to talk about recruiting a little bit. I'll just go through it like real fast. Jalen Hale, I believe it's September 21st. He's the next big decision to watch for Texas, and like Texas is looking better right now. Texas, man, I think I'd be putting the cart too far out in front of the horse if I said that Texas is is firmly in the lead for Jalen Hale. But at the moment, because we saw with like what happened with like Anthony Hill, where like I was like, oh crap, like Texas might have made a move to be the front runner coming out of his official visit in June, and then you saw what happened with A&M. But Jalen Hale is I just don't think that I don't see a way that him to A&M happens because one of the biggest Haynes King would have to go and ball out on Saturday. He would have to ball out. Texas A&M would have to win by a ton. Like Jalen Hale would have to have the best visit of any he's taken so far, and then I think A&M would be at least legitimately in the running. And I just don't think that's going to happen. So I like that. It's probably a coin flip at this point between Alabama and Texas, and he's the finishing touch. If not Yedin McCall, Harrison Pilot on campus last weekend, and realistically, he could be the fourth wideout in the class. Javian Toviano sounds like it sounded good for a little bit this fall, and I still think there's a chance that Texas can turn it around, but at the moment it's looking pretty heavy. Like I wrote a couple months ago that he was leaning out of state, not necessarily to any one school, because he had Oregon, Michigan, and LSU in the running for a while, but it looks like it's probably going to be LSU, and Michigan is very much still hanging around. That's unfortunate. He would have been a good finishing touch to the DB class. Warren Roberson is he was the new offer, I believe. Safety from Red Oak. If I'm mixing up names here, I'll get through and correct that later.
All I know with the Jalen Hale recruitment is this might be very naive of me, but whenever I see Arch Manning, repost one of those guys on Instagram, like I said, I could just be naive, but it gets me fired up, and I feel like, who wouldn't want to play with Arch Manning? Granted, there's a lot of people that have chose not to, but
yeah.
From all accounts, it looked like he had a great visit.
So here's the way that I'm like, yes, you make a very valid point. Jonte Cook is like, there's always the thing like Jonte Cook is like the most outspoken Texas commit, and now like Jalen Hale is his primary target. But here's the thing that keeps sitting with me is that Jalen Hale values NIL and the opportunity to play early. If we're just looking at this from a basic recruiting pitch standpoint, I don't think it's a guarantee that he's like a starter immediately or maybe even in his second year. Probably by then, but like Texas got a deep class right now. I'm actually posting something tomorrow morning where Jonah Wilson, he's on fire. He's off to a hot start. He's looking like a high 4-star, 5-star, at least for the start of the season. This is a deep class, and I think actually in a weird way, Texas is like how good they looked and like how versatile some of the wideouts looked and just how bad some of the Alabama wideouts looked.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Hale might be looking at that in a way where he's like, man, I can come in at Alabama and play right away, and that they're actually making an NIL push for him. It's that pitch that makes me hesitate with Hale.
That's such a fair point, and it's like a catch-22 because we want to see our current roster have a ton of success. We want to see the teams we play, not play well. But then when it goes to a guy's priority who wants to get on the field quickly, if you have a bunch of guys who are clearly ahead of them, a wide receiver group that has shown a lot of promise compared to Alabama last week, dropping passes left and right. That's a great point that you bring up. That could be a major swing, even though you would think that us playing Alabama close is a good thing for Texas, where in this case it maybe not.
Yeah, it's the most interesting recruitment that Texas is involved in at this point. I think where for a while it was Toviano, but I think that's starting to clear up a little bit, and now it's probably that one, Cecilia Kana and Marcus Deal, that are some of the ones to watch. Cecilia Kana, I did a piece on that today quickly. It was mostly other reporting, but it was just stuff that Texas. I mean, it's big. Texas might be in the lead for Kana right now. We'll see how the rest of his visits go. I don't know when, but I believe he's got something on the books with LSU, and then OU and A&M probably to come. Okay. But that's pretty much it for this week. Probably a quicker show.
I just have one question. We haven't talked about this off the air, and I know at least I'm interested. I'm sure our viewers are too. If you have any insight to anything about, obviously this is getting way ahead of things, but anything about a possible Evan Stewart unhappy in College Station makes his way to Austin. I know his whole, I mean, you can never trust him when he's liking and retweeting things, but it certainly put a little buzz into the Texas Twitter community. I was wondering if you had any kind of thoughts on insight on that you could give.
So, do I have anything that I've seen that's like behind the scenes or like even more than an educated guess? Probably not, if I'm being honest. But I mean, I guess I can say enough to make an educated guess that like if Texas finishes the season with at least 8 wins, a solid passing attack, Quinn Ewers finishes the season with momentum, and A&M is still struggling. Actually, and there's one more very key ingredient here. And Texas is looking in the portal for a wide receiver. There's a really big X factor that I have here, and I think that might be if Jordan Whittington leaves for the NFL after this season. I think there's a way that something like that could happen. I mean, who knows? Like, this is a crazy day, and like, I mean, Texas, all they had to do was finish with a winning record last season to get Evan Stewart. So, I mean, it's not out of the question. I love that Evan Stewart, Jonte Cook.
Yeah.
Have you seen that video on YouTube?
Maybe not. No, which one are you talking about?
So, oh man, there's a guy, I'm losing the name right now. There's a guy on YouTube that does a bunch of like the day in the life of a 5-star.
Okay.
He was the one that did the visit with the swimming trophies thing with Jonte.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, but he does a lot of stuff with Jonte and Evan Stewart, and he does some, like, they work out together. I think they're fairly close. I mean, they're both from the Metroplex. So I think they both use at least one of the same wide receiver coaches during the off season. But yeah, no longer than like 30 seconds into Jonte walking into the video is he already saying like, man, Evan Stewart's like ready for like 15 catches this season.
That's funny.
He's just picking at Jimbo and A&M and God, yeah, but I mean, hell, it was Evan Stewart fumbling that.
Yeah, that cost them. I know.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. Obviously, if Evan Stewart hops into the portal and Texas is looking for a wideout, like, could I see that happening? If he's like any bit unhappy at A&M, sure, like playing out like a Quinn Ewers situation in a way.
Yeah.
But I think so much depends on. Yeah, how A&M finishes up, obviously how Texas finishes up, but really just if that spot is there. Like, he's not coming to Texas if it's not like a guaranteed. If he's going to have to compete for playing time, I don't think he would come here. So if Jordan Whittington's off to the NFL, Texas wants him coming out of the slot, or like, I feel like more of his natural fit would be as an X.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you got Evan Stewart and Xavier Worthy in the same offense, I'm sure you could mix it up.
Yeah, Sanders. I mean, yeah, it's pretty crazy what some of these like projected on paper lineups could look like. But yeah, I was just curious because there's certainly some. I mean, A&M's been creating a lot of buzz on Twitter over the past couple of days, but that was one that I was actually interested in. So.
Yeah, no, I think that like that's one of those where it's just like Evan Stewart was a wild card during his recruitment.
Yeah.
And I think he could still be very polarizing if he like decided to even like test the waters in the portal. But I think for him, if you look back at his recruitment, he made a little bit of an early decision to commit to Texas. But like if you look back, all of the moves he made sense. And like if the moves that Texas, like if the moves he makes leads him to Texas, it's going to be because there's a clear position to start for him that like the offense is just meant for. I mean, obviously the offense is better fit for him at Texas.
Yeah.
If he lands at Texas, because it makes sense and he can start right away. And so from what you're saying, I mean, yeah, I haven't paid attention to him as much on social media as I usually do. So, I mean, just mainly because he's at A&M now.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thought, and I mean, if I was like an odds maker, I'm sure he would be near the top of my list.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you never know, like you said, in today's day and age, things can change so quickly. So.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Shane, I thank you for joining us this week. Man, we're gonna have a lot to talk about next week.
For sure.
Whatever happens, start a Big 12 play in about a week and a half. So, again, thank you all for joining us, and hoping for a good result this weekend, and some positive things to talk about next week. So, again, thank you all, and hook 'em.
Thank you. Hook 'em.